Hello, this video is going over a video that you had watched under React Getting Started under Pluralsight. This is having to do with this playground that was built. I believe it was right before the stars, that star game that he built. There was you're all working on class components and functional components, and I wanted to show you the difference between the two. Here you can see them both built out. I will kind of walk you through how this is done and the steps that need to happen. But just wanted to show you both of these are functioning in this playground. I'm also going to at the end show you how this would look in Visual Studio Code. If you want I built a function, the class components. It's the class component. If you want to try to change it on your own in Visual Studio Code, I'll leave a link to this repo. I'll update this with the actual YouTube walkthrough when I get this done. And you can just go to this and clone it, or fork it, I mean, and then clone it from your account, and you can practice changing these class components over to hooks. First and foremost, you're going to notice that the way I changed these functions, you can use this format. This isn't using a arrow function. This is using a function declaration is what this is called. Just normally, you guys probably all know that. So you notice how all my functional components here are using that. Now you can use arrow functions, but again, only use an arrow function if you know why you're using it. If you don't understand the difference, then just stick with like a function declaration, unless there's a need for an arrow function, if you're understanding the difference and why. So let's go ahead and I'm going to scroll down here. Sorry. I'll let you look at this code for a little bit. So the first thing, let's say what happened here is a company we're working for a company, and our company said, hey, we currently are using class components and we're kind of behind the times. We want to switch everything over to a functional component look. Massive waste of time. I don't know why a company would do this, but for some reason they want someone to go through and change everything from class components to functional components. What that means, what I would always do is you would want to create some sort of diagram of your components. Class components, functional components are all component based, right? And remember that props can only go downwards on this, right? If I declare const cat equals the string cat here, then this can access it, this can access it, this can access it. But if card here, this component, which is a child of card list, and card list is a child of app, if card declares here in this instance saying, hey, I want let dog equal the string dog, card list has no way to access that because it is a parent. So just keep that in mind. If ever in this situation you would need to redesign something, you need to understand how props is working regardless, because it's important for the function that you're building. I'm going to skip over a lot of the logic and just show you how this is built out. Kind of give you some tips and tricks of what I would do if I was faced with this situation. So first and foremost, let's go ahead and refresh this here. So let's get this back to our functional component, and I'll just refresh this one too. I'm sorry, our class-based component. So now these are exactly the same, right? We're going to scroll down to the bottom. The first thing that we want to do is we want to move, let's just start at app. I'm going to start at the app component, and we're going to move on from there. This is exactly how it's built. Sorry, go all the way over here. This is exactly how it's built in our app. So we have app, which has two children, and then card list as a child card. So just try to keep that in mind. Sorry for the flipping of screens. All right. So first is first, I'm gonna do function declarations. You might know that there may be some reasons the arrow functions won't work for you if you're following my code. So if you're gonna follow my code, maybe find the difference. Why would an arrow functional component work differently than a functional declarated component? So I'm going to declare it first by saying function, and I'm going to say app. App's going to take in props as a variable, and I'm going to put that there. And that's what we're going to change that to. So now this is a functional component. If I save this, it's going to break things. Why? Because I'm saying functional component here, but I have class-based stuff all the way down here. So let's change things to functional components first. So what I just deleted, and you can reference the code over here to the left as well. And I will make both of these a bit bigger. Okay. So for functional components, this is what it looks like. We're going to declare a variable, and I'm going to try to point out these are the same here. So I'm now changing our variable. So instead, we're saying const. We're going to call this profiles, just like you can see on line 50 on my class component. And then instead, I want to draw a connection here for you. So you are naming, let me finish this out. Use state, and you're going to declare the variable somewhere. So I'm going to say profiles, just to give you an example here. This is basically what you're doing, right? I'm setting, this is going to be known as profiles, and I'm setting it to the value of profiles. We have to say use state because of how it was built. Now, how do you, in this class-based component, how do you change state? You have to say this dot set state. Okay, notice you're calling it state here, and then you have to set state. So think about that. So instead of state, we're calling this profiles, and then we're calling set profiles. Get rid of this line because that's not what we're doing here. And instead of that, we're setting the value to an empty array here instead of profiles. And I saved it, and that broke our code, because it should break our code, because we have everything up to this point is functional, everything up to this point is class-based. So it should break. Okay, just like any component that you build, you should break it up into different concerns. First, you have your variables. Next, you should have functions, handler functions, and then you should have your render. Speaking of render, that needs to go, because with our functional components, we don't render things. And there's a curly brace, of course, with that render, so we got to get rid of that. Okay, now this will take you some understanding what is happening here. What is the purpose of this function? Why does app need this function? What is this function doing? These are great questions that you would need to find the answer to. I'm going to pause just for a second. If you want to pause the video, figure it out on your own. So what's happening here is, just like the name suggests, we are creating a function called add new profile, and this function is taking in a bunch of data. This is going to be inside a curly brace. Now this is going to be passed on to form. You can see that here on this function is called add new profile, and we're renaming it for the form component on submit. That's what we're calling it. So anytime we say on submit inside of form, we are referencing this code here. That's what this is saying. So this is this, right? Is this. They're all the same, except in form, we can't call add new profile. We have to call it something else, which we have to declare in this kind of syntax. So we have to say on submit now in the form. So anytime we say on submit, we're actually calling this function, which is doing what? Well, we're taking inside profile data, it looks like, and that profile data, we are changing state, which is this, right? And we are saying, okay, previous state, this is a built-in function. So we're saying everything that's in this state, we want to include every argument inside this. So it's an array, it's an empty array, which we see here. And if there are multiple indexes in this array, index 0, 1, 2, each of those are its separate argument, and we're putting in here. So we're iterating through this set state, and we're changing profiles to everything that was inside of profiles and the new information, which we are calling profile data, which we are getting, which will make sense in form when we move up here. We're grabbing that data with this GET request, right? All that information that it's a big object, and we're going to store it here, plus all the old info. So how would we build that? Well, let's get rid of all this. So this is going to be very different. It's going to be a lot simpler. What are we calling this? Add new profile. And that is going to be equal to what? Well, we have profile data that we're going to be sent to us, right? And then with that profile data, we are going to set profiles. We're going to set this information, which is currently an empty array. What do we want to change that to? We want to change that to anything that's inside of profiles. This spread operator is taking everything inside of profiles, every index, and making it an argument. We're taking everything inside of that, and what else? We also want the new profile data, which is being sent in. Okay, we're done. That easy. Okay, so let's go to our return statement. We got rid of render because we don't need to render things. Now we have this. Anytime you see this, when you're changing, you can get rid of. But what is about props.title? Well, that's being sent from here. So we want to keep props. We're calling props to get the information from the parent. So this dot add new profile, we get rid of this. We're just calling add new profile. This dot state dot profiles. Now, normally, like you see over here, we need to call state dot profiles dot notation to access. Now, just profiles. We have declared a variable here. We're just calling that variable here. All right, and we are done with our app. You can see it's rendering here when we save. All right, let's go to form next. State. How do we do that? Oh, before state, we should probably do the name here, right? Again, I'm doing function declaration, which starts with the function keyword. Then we say the name of the new component, and then we're going to put in props as an argument, and we're going to put in a curly brace. Okay, we're going to change our state. We use that with declaring the variable with const. An array, we're going to name the value of const. Let me scroll up here so we can see form. I'm going to scroll down here so we can kind of have the same view on each side. So const, we are naming the variable on line 25 username, with n being a capital. Okay, and then remember to change that, we're saying set, we're going to use the username. Okay, and that's going to be equal to something called useState, and we're setting username equal to what? It looks like we're setting it to an empty string for now. We're going to save that. Now we're getting an error. Why are we getting an error? Because everything here up from this line 25 to here is a functional component. Everything below is class-based still. So we should be getting an error. Now, next, again, we're separating concerns. We have our variables here, then we have our functions, and then we have our return statement. So function here, handle submit, is an asynchronous event that we're taking in. Event.prevent default, excellent. Const response equals await axios.get. This dot props on submit. Now this will not do. We do not use this. Now we use props to reference props. Dot on submit, and then we're grabbing response and the data. We're digging in a level into that for all the data. This dot set state. So this is trying to change state. Remember, class base, you're always going to use this to change state. But for here, instead of set state, we're going to use set username to change state. Set username, parentheses, and then what do we want to change username to? Just an empty string. So username will equal an empty string at the end of this. Okay, next we have a render. We don't use renders, so we get rid of that. We have a form here. It says this dot handle submit, so we'll get rid of the this keyword. Remember this dot state username. We don't use this dot state. We just have username. Okay, we have an on change event that's trying to call this dot set state. So it's trying to change state to whatever, it's changing username to whatever event.target.value. Now, how do we change state? We are going to, instead of this dot set state, we are going to use set username. So we're just going to delete all of that. Actually, I'm going to keep that curly brace at the end. We're going to delete all this. So instead, we're going to take in the event, which is a key down. You are releasing the key and it comes up. You click on something, but on change is listening to those keystrokes. So we're going to, on the changes, we're going to set the variable username. You gotta spell it right. To, what do we want to set it to? Event.target.value. Whoops. New keyboard. There we go. Set username to event.target.value. Perfect. All right. Okay, let me see here. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, let's go to card. So for card, let's take this out again, function, and we're going to say card, take in props, and curly brace. First, getting rid of the render keyword here, getting rid of an extra curly brace for the render. Looks like we're declaring a value here. So remember how we do that, const. And this was, let me move this back up so we're on the same. I'll move this one down. So const, we're going to call it profile, which means that when we want to change profile, we got to use the function set profile. New keyboard equal to use state. And then what are we wanting to change this? Or what does profile equal? This dot props. What would we use instead of this dot props? Just props. I think we'd get an error here because this is an image and it's not using an alternate tag. So I'm just going to put in profile. It probably wouldn't give us this error here because he doesn't use it over here. I don't know, maybe. We could inspect real fast just for funsies. Safari. I don't know. Doesn't look like we got one though. Okay, last but not least, card list. I'm going to change this from this just so for consistency. I'm going to put a return around that. I just want to make sure I'm not naming things wrong here. Profile. Good. Okay. There's card list. There we go. Handle submit. Did I rename something? Did I delete something? Oh. So handle submit here isn't being declared. So got to do that. I'm missing our variable word there. All right. Let's test it. Let's see if it works. We're not getting errors. Maybe the API is really slow. Maybe my internet's down. Undefined is not an object. Do I have this somewhere over here? Ah, I missed a spot. Look, right here. This dot state dot username. That's not how we call variables, remember? We've switched, so we're username. There we go. Uh-oh, props.profiles.map is not a function. Why would I get that? So I'm grabbing props. Now remember, card list is a child of of app. So apps declaring profiles is equal to profiles. So we're saying props.profiles and we're mapping over those profiles. We're going to take in a profile and we're going to use the profile ID and we're going to take every single argument from profile. Is it? No, I don't think so. Let me look at, I have it functioning over here, so I'm just going to look at my code here because I don't know why it's wrong. Let me look at my card list here. Okay. This is weird. Card list props. Look, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to just paste it right here. delete that and test it. I didn't see any differences. Yeah. That shouldn't work. Okay. All right. Well, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to bring my code over here so I can look at each individual one and see if I made any I had to have made a mistake somewhere in my code here. Set profiles, use state. Oh, I see my problem. It's that first one. I even need my code for this. So what's the problem with set profiles? It's not setting it to an array. I think that's our main problem. So these would be objects because profile data is an object. So it's not putting them inside of an object, or I'm sorry, it's not putting them inside of an array. So that was it. Which I could normally console log and find out, but because of this playground, I wasn't able to. So that's just a logic thing. But there we go. We've worked through 27 minutes. Gosh, that is a long time to work through that. I'm sorry this video is so long. Let me go ahead and get rid of those. While I know this is really long, and I will make a note of the times to skip to different places. So we've gone through how to make this work and changing over it to functional. I just wanted to point out a few things with how things look on GitHub. So, well, let me open Visual Studio Code for you. This is it. It looks a bit different on Visual Studio Code, right? Actually, let's do this. Let's open up Safari again, and I'm going to show you step by step of. We'll show you a little bit of where things are coming from. Okay, this needs to go. Need you minimized. Where's my code? There we go. All right. All right, so last little bit that we need to go over here, just kind of showing you how things look in Visual Studio Code. Now, first and foremost, this code here has been changed already, but that's not really important for the way things look here. I just want to show you how the looks are a bit different from this playground. So first and foremost, you see React DOM dot render. So it's the parent child and it's holding an app. Now that's our index. You notice here we have our source folder, and I've created a folder called components, which you normally would do, and this would be all the components that don't involve your app or your index. Some people put apps in the components folder, that's fine. The app.js component. So index, you can immediately notice that it's calling the same thing, React DOM.render, and inside this will automatically be there, and then I have app, and I have the same, I just copied and pasted this into here. But yeah, app is always going to take in the, or I'm sorry, index.js is always going to take in the app component. So next, let's take a look at app. So you notice there's a few things. Now, all of this is the same, right? You could copy and paste. In fact, when you fork and clone, you'll notice that this is the exact same. The only difference is you need to import some of the variables that you're using. So if you're calling the form component, you need to import the form component. If you're calling the card list component, you need to import it. And this is how you grab those. You go to the folder and then you grab the card list. Okay, and then you have to export your component. And you can do that up here or down here at the end. There's different ways of doing that. Now you notice also if I'm using a functional component or hooks, this is something that's built in. It's called use state, which we were using to use hooks basically, right? So use state is what gives you the initial value for the profiles, right? So you need that. So those are just the small differences, and you'll notice that each one of these is the exact same that way. You go to, let me just go to our components here, and I'm going to go to form, close this again. Okay, again, this information is the exact same. Nothing has changed in this area. The only thing that's different is the export form, which is the name of our component. We need to always export them. And then importing React, which is you always need to do. And then in this case, we're using hooks, so we need to have use state. And then import Axios because we're using an Axios call. Axios is a package you need to have in order to use it. It's a separate software other than React. So we need to import React because we're using React. We need to import Axios because we're using that. In this, you notice we didn't import Axios at the, like on the app. It's because we're not using it there. So, and then last but not least, card list, export, and we got to import React and the card. And card. Import React and export card. So I hope that's helpful going over how to change things over. Again, you will have access to the changed code. It will be in my GitHub, and you'll have access to the functional and the class-based components. I will post my code for the changes here as well, so that you can access that and take a look at the code. I thank you and have a good one.